Welcome back to the Obvious Choice podcast. It's just me and Ren again today, hanging out, doing
Yeah,
our thing. Ren brought his Twizzlers today,
they are delicious.
his
Very
favorite
tasty.
snack.
Yes.
We we should, have you ever heard of uh well crap, what's it called?
I don't know.
Buy Me a Coffee. Like there's a website called Buy Me a Coffee, and so it's like
Really?
a donation thing. And so like if
Yes.
you do a lot of articles or whatever, you can put at the footnote like, buy me a coffee, and then you can like
Yes.
send somebody enough money to buy them a coffee. You need buy me a Twizzler is
I
what you
do
need. Yeah.
because nothing gets me going like sugar wrapped in a plastic that tastes like nothing. It's just a
Yes,
delicious snack all the way around.
exactly.
Uh, Twizzlers are delicious. Thank you, Twizzlers,
No, absolutely.
for
So
existing.
I was thinking today, a fun topic, well, fun to me, I'll see how you feel about it, is
All right.
going over different policies that a lot of coaches tend to miss. When we're first building our business, we get really excited and we're like, okay, terms of service, privacy policy, good to
Mm-hmm.
go, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that happen in running your business that when you're kind of in the moment, you react emotionally instead of thinking about, okay, what's the best situation for my client, for my business. And
Mm-hmm.
so thinking about these things ahead of time can really help put your mind at ease, and also if and when that situation occurs, you know exactly what to do and you can handle it to the best of your ability. So I thought
Mm-hmm.
that could be a fun topic
Yeah.
for us today.
Yes. Respond instead of react. I like it.
Yes, exactly. So the way that my brain works, I was joking with Ren about this earlier. My brain categorizes things in buckets. So anytime there's an episode where it's me and Ren and it's a topic that I've kind of brought up, I'm probably going to say the word buckets a lot, most likely. So so with policies, there's five buckets in my mind when it comes to how we kind of categorize these. And so we have
Mhm.
like operational type policies, which would, and we'll kind of dive into several different pieces of each of these. But
Okay, I'm
operational
taking
policies,
notes.
so think like your privacy policy, situational policies, which is like the big one that causes a lot of reactionary behaviors,
Hmm.
financial policies, ethical policies, and then deviation policies. So overarching vision for today's podcast, those are the five buckets that we'll kind of dive into today. So
I
with
like it.
if we start off with operational policies, I think my camera went funny. In the Online Trainer Academy, we have I know I'm all fuzzy. This is going to drive me bananas. There we go. We have a thing that we help our students with that gives them their terms of service, their liability policy,
The
and then
wording.
also their terms of service. Right.
Hmm.
So those are kind of the obvious three that I don't think that we really need to kind of go into very much, but do know, like, especially if you are working with people in like the EU, for example, with your privacy policy, it's very
Yes.
different there. Those are different standards that you have to meet. And in the Online Trainer Academy, we do have something to help with that. But we won't dive into those necessarily because those are kind of the typical ones that people do know to take a look at.
Hmm.
But there are a few that I think could be great conversation pieces. So the first one I think would be fun to go over is our like a social media policy. I don't know if this is something you've done or have seen, but a social media policy would be like, what is it that you are sharing and what are they sharing? So for example, like are you screenshotting conversations and sharing them on social media, which kind of goes into privacy policy, but I would make this an extension of that.
Hmm.
Are you sharing their name? Are you tagging them in things, that sort of thing?
Right.
So having that laid out, especially for a lot of us, this is our businesses are very social media driven. So
Absolutely.
having something laid out like this is helpful to set expectations for clients. So you don't run into the situation of like, oh, I didn't want you to share that, or, why didn't you ask me first, or, those kind of things.
Fun story. Uh,
Mm.
early in my career, when I was still training people in person as well as online, I was working with a client, Solange Perrier, I think it was her name.
Mm,
Very nice French lady, 76 years old, yogi, phenomenal strength, amazing lady, super fun. I worked with her and her husband, Peter. Now, Solange was from France and Peter was from Britain. Funny
mm.
guy. At one point, he was going to become a Catholic priest. Told the best
Interesting.
jokes, as I'm sure you can imagine. Just an
Naturally.
awesome, awesome guy. Like I think Peter was 79, Solange was 75 or 76. Solange was doing a plank one day. I said, Solange, you mind if I record this and share it? She said, oh no, absolutely. Please feel free to. Recorded her doing the plank, and then I joked in the video, uploaded it. A friend of hers saw the video, told her about it.
Mhm.
I came back to train her the next time, and Solange was pissed. The French
Oh
Revolution nearly happened
no.
twice because and she was saying things. Unfortunately, I didn't understand. There was a
Mm.
lot of how did Ricky Bobby say it? You talk like your mouth's covered in peanut butter. Like it was a lot of I think she said pen in French la plume, and
Yeah.
I learned a valuable lesson about policies for social media because she didn't understand what I meant when I said share it. Had I had a
Mm-hmm.
policy for that, more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, some type of clearance, waiver, et cetera,
Yep.
and been able to explain specifically what I meant when I said share, I could have stayed out of a lot of trouble that day. I got a verbal spanking from this 4'11" French woman that day. Is it still a
Hey, and you
great
got it
friend?
for free. Some people would
Got
have
it for
paid for
free.
that,
I
you
didn't.
know?
I didn't have to pay for it. Most
She
people
paid
have to go
you.
to Amsterdam for the ass whooping that I got from the French woman, but not me. It was right here in North Carolina. So this is a really important thing because social media decidedly is even more prevalent today than it was in certainly in 2016 with that first cohort of OTA when a lot of
Mm-hmm.
this paperwork was initiated. There's so
Yeah.
much more social stuff that people do. Um, and I wish I could have learned this lesson that you're giving, Amber, before I got the beat down. But I think it's awesome that you're sharing it today. Good, great job, Amber. You're saving someone out there who's
There we go.
not going to get beaten.
Get the verbal
Uh,
spanking.
yeah, no more spankings.
Yeah.
She's a good spanker
What I
though, but I
actually,
digress.
hey, one of the things I used to do when I was still doing coaching online, as part of their onboarding, I actually
Mhm.
had them fill out something for this where they pre-gave consent for various
Yes,
situations. And I would ask them, is it automatically a yes? Do you want me to ask you first, or is it always a no? And so I
yes,
had that to refer back to. So that way, I didn't have to go back and forth as much. And that was
yes.
part of my policy, was to do that. So they very clearly understood and gave consent. And I had that as a,
Super important.
CYA. Mm-hmm.
Super important, and much easier to deal
Yes.
with on the front end uh,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
than on the
reacting to
beat
that
down
because
end.
they may not even realize, what it could impact for them.
Hmm.
Their work may see it, friends and family may see it. They may not realize comments that they would get. Like it's helpful to do that ahead of
Yeah.
time. Another really big one that I feel like a lot of coaches tend to miss is a community standards and conduct policy. Most of us have some sort of group element, whether it's
Hmm.
online, like a virtual group, like in a Facebook group, or it may
Yep.
be, a Zoom calls or what have you. But emphasizing the type of behavior and communication and conduct that you want to have happen in your group. So obviously, emphasizing things like kindness, respect, yada yada, all of the, things that we think about, but also like inclusivity and diversity. Like what what is your approach to that?
Hmm.
What about confidentiality? What happens if someone screenshots something that's private in a group and shares it
Right.
publicly? How are you going to handle that and make that known? If there's conflict, how are you going to handle that? What are some prohibitive behaviors? If someone needs to report something, how do they do that and what happens
Hmm.
after? again, this is one of those things where it's like, oh my God, something happened and now I have to figure out how to handle it, and so again, thinking about this ahead of time, I think is a much smarter play, especially when
And
there's a lot of people involved.
yeah, and it's not something that you have to repeat, right? The great thing about it
Mm-hmm.
is once you sort of sure there's thought that goes into it up front, right? And
Yep.
I can I can hear our virtual procrastinators thinking, "Oh, this is another
Mm-hmm.
reason for me not to start my business." That's not what we're saying, and please don't let this
Mm-hmm.
be something that you like. You don't have to hire a full legal team to get this
Yeah, no.
accomplished. Be considerate about it, state it clearly, um, but you don't have to repetitively think about it. Like once you get it
Yep.
established, you get to sort of move on with your life. But it's a step that you may not want to skip, but it's also a
Yes.
step that you don't want. Like again, don't let
Hold you
this be the
back.
reason that you don't launch until 2026,
Exactly.
right?
And most of
Keep
these
it
are pretty
moving.
straightforward. Yeah, they're
Pretty
not these
straightforward.
long, multiple pages, thing to kind of figure out. So, um, other big ones, rescheduling policies. So this is something that we
Mm,
think about for in person, but like what happens if a client misses, or if they miss or have to reschedule a call with you, right? Is it
yes.
use it or lose it? Does it roll over to the next month? How do you handle them rescheduling? Is there a certain time period that they have to do it before they lose it? Also, what if you have to reschedule? There should also be an expectation for them about if you do something, what happens. So that's a pretty straightforward one. Obviously, cancellation policy. So if they cancel, lots of coaching calls, are you going to handle that differently than, kind of someone who does it once in a blue moon? I know you may have run into this. I've definitely had people that like just constantly last minute canceling. It would drive me bananas.
I hate it. I hate
Yeah.
it because I hate it because I hate it. That's all the
Yeah.
explanation that I need. And what so here's what the policies do for you, dear listenership. Um, the policies keep you from having to be the bad guy, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I
Gives you
don't like to
something to
be the
blame.
bad guy. I like to be fun
Mm-hmm.
dad. I don't want to. I don't want to be mean dad, right? So
Yeah.
I can always say, well, I would, but the policy. I would,
Mm-hmm.
but the certain, but the guidelines. The second thing they
Yep.
keep you from doing is hating your clients, right? You get to the point where you'll really start to you start to resent these people for jerking your chain
Yes.
around, and you don't mean to not like them anymore, but you don't want to have an adversarial relationship with your clientele
Mm-hmm.
just based on the fact that you can't manage their personalities, right? You don't manage people, you manage systems, and systems keep people
Yep.
in line. Uh, this will keep you out of the awkward space of disagreeable conversations with your clientele. Because some people just don't have great boundaries, and they aren't very forward thinking people. They're not the type of people that prepare. Hello, it's the reason why they need coaches, right? So
Yep.
you're not likely to get really. It's less likely that you have incredibly structured humans reach out to you for coaching. You could,
Yep.
but generally speaking, there's some lack of structure in their lives already, which is why they look for a coach.
Yep.
Not to say that it's always directly correlated, but you can't depend on you can't expect you from other people, as the
Yeah.
internet often
Absolutely.
says. I digress.
And it also keeps things fair across the board,
Fair,
because like sometimes we're in a better mood and we're like, oh, it's fine,
right?
but like then we have a crappy mood one day and we're like extra hard about something for no reason just because we're
Yes,
in a mood. And so it just
yes,
kind of helps everybody be more fair consistently.
yes. That's a great point.
So yeah. Also communication policy, because I hear this from our students all the time of like, it takes them forever to respond, or they're reaching out in kind of other ways that I prefer not to. I feel overwhelmed because sometimes they text me, sometimes they email, sometimes it's on social
Yes,
media, right? So having some kind of communication policy about what channels are acceptable, what hours they can expect a response from you,
Mm-hmm.
and also kind of what you expect from them as well. So if they do not respond with information that you need in order to do your job, what happens? If they don't fill out the workout and
Yeah.
you need to update their plans, how are you going to handle that?
It's the communication piece was my first big mistake in online
Mm,
coaching. Now, having said that, I was online coaching in summer of 2014. I had not met John yet. I wasn't familiar with the
mm-hmm.
organization. That would have been still in 1K extra phases
Yep.
of the online trainer academy. So this was 2 years before the academy rolled out. But one of the biggest mistakes that I made early on is I would let clients contact me in whatever the most convenient way was for them. So I
Mm-hmm.
had a structured time to go back and reply to them. But I would spend 20 minutes trying to figure out if they sent me an email, a text, a DM on Instagram, a PM on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. Yeah, like I couldn't remember
Carrier
you.
pigeon.
Yeah, carrier pigeon. Like that you read a question somewhere
Yep.
and who it was from, and then you're like,
Yep.
why can't I find it? So I had to trim everything down to scheduled phone call through the app, uh, text
Mm-hmm.
message directly to my Google Voice number, which is not my phone number, but it's
Yep.
um, or um, or you contacted me in our private group, like, and now that's so easy, even a man can do it. Like, I only got three places to look for that communication, and it really simplifies things for me because
Yeah.
you can go. It's cool when you got three clients. When you have 30,
Mm-hmm.
you've got problems.
Oh
um
my God.
it's a
Your head
lot.
is
It's a
spinning.
lot.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
bad.
lot. So getting that communication sort of policy out there and understood and agreed upon, it's really an act in efficiency and
Mm-hmm.
saving your time, because you don't want to spend hours trying to find messages. That was a big one for me. That was a big fail for me early on. So again, Amber, I love that you're doing this. I wish you'd have done it like 7 years ago or eight, but it's still good today. There's still new people out there now.
These are all very hard learned
They're
lessons.
hard
These are
learned lessons. Like, this
mostly
comes.
mistakes I made also.
Yes, this is definitely one of those I know how to fix that on the car because I broke it on the car conversations.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
why your favorite local mechanic knows so much about cars, because he trashed all of the
Hmm.
things ahead of you,
Exactly.
and we've trashed this one for sure.
Yep.
It's good
And I
stuff,
think
Amber.
one thing to keep in mind too, especially when we think about policies, typically people are looking at them from the perspective of how do I protect the business. But policies should be a two-way street. They're
Mm-hmm.
meant to protect you, the business owner, but also meant to serve your client. So they should be still client centric.
Mm-hmm.
So it shouldn't be just about you. It should also be serving them. So, try to look at it through that lens, because even something like a communication policy, obviously it helps them when we talked to last podcast episode about avoiding the bucket of confusion and why
Yes.
clients quit, right? These eliminate confusion and
Mm-hmm.
fear. So that's another reason why these are just so darn important.
Mm-hmm.
So now, obviously, there are way more that we could probably come up with, but we'll scoot into a different bucket here.
I think
So
that's fair.
situational policies. So things that kind of happen, repeatedly sometimes when working with clients that we don't think about ahead of time. So I'm sure you'll probably think of things that I perhaps missed, but we'll run through a few here. So things like missed events, like if you have some sort of group event, for example, what happens if they don't show up? Right? Is there some kind of recording that they get access to? Do they get access to that forever? Is it a limited time? Or if you just don't show up, you get nothing? Those kind of things. So if they
Mm-hmm.
miss an event, what's your policy around that? Big one, pausing or going on vacation.
Mm.
I don't know how many times we get questions about this from students. How are you going to handle if a client says, I need to pause for a little bit because I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks? How do you want to handle that? Because it will happen without question.
100%.
Yeah. How do you? Because I think you have something set up for vacation, don't you?
Yeah,
Or am I
absolutely.
forgetting?
Because so for me specifically, I'm using software through Precision Nutrition that up until recently it's changed now, but up until recently it couldn't be paused. It was under the guise
Mm,
of you can't pause real life, so let's learn how to negotiate around the end,
hmm
which I totally understood. Um, but not only the pause for my clients, so my clients, I just need to be notified 2 weeks ahead of time, and I set everything up for them up front to make space for whatever else they need to do. So I don't really there's not really a penalization for them stepping away. And I'm not judging people who do. Like, you get to run it.
Yeah.
The, it's not what you do that's the issue. It's that it's communicated up front and understood.
Yes.
That's the
Exactly.
problem, right? You don't want to surprise it. And then on the other side of that coin, as a coach, your vacation, right? Because you get to go
Mm-hmm.
places too, right? What's the policy
Yep.
there, and are they aware way ahead of time what your time off looks like for them? Because that's another area where I botched,
And
right?
that's
I
one I
messed
didn't
that up
have, so
too.
that was great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
and come back to a clean a missing roster of clients. I've done that before. Because
Oh
nobody
yeah.
knew what was going on. It's just stupid. But I mean,
Yeah, and then
you
how often can they do it? Right? Are they going
right,
on vacation every month?
right.
Do you allow a 2 week, pause for any reason, once a quarter, or, once every 6 months, or however you want to do it? Like you said,
Hmm.
with almost all of these policies, it's all fair game. It's just,
Right.
are you communicating it clearly? So that way they have the option to opt in or opt out of working with you because of those policies.
Very good
Same
point.
thing. So related to that, sick policy. What if they're sick? And also, like, what kind of sick? Like, do you have a way to manage? Like, what's the old rule of thumb? If it's from the neck up, you're fine.
Yeah.
If from the neck
Yeah.
down, we should pause. you know.
Chill. Yeah. Just
Um,
relax.
yep. So having something,
Uh,
if they have some kind of extended, sick period, how you want to handle that. Um, this is a big one, and that I get really uptight about when people talk about this. So I'll be curious to get
Don't
your
be uptight, Amber.
perspective. It does it. Yeah, I get really soapboxy on this one. So when when a client leaves service with you, what happens to the
Hmm.
materials that they were given and the workouts that they were provided? So anything that was part of their service, what happens to it? Do they get a copy? Do they lose access? Do they get a certain amount of time to gather their own stuff that they want from it? How do you want to handle that? Because that's been I see a lot of posts around this. Like, well, they left, so they get nothing. Which, if that's the policy, fine. That's totally
Fine.
fine. Yep,
They got to
that's
know though.
yeah. They got to know. That's that's the problem. But yeah, what happens if they leave? What can they take? What can't they take? Are you providing it? Are they able to download it on their own? Um, so
This
that's one that I see that gets missed a lot.
this is a big one. Because before I started working in the online, like, it's easy when you're in person. Like, they don't pay, they don't
Mm-hmm.
have they're not scheduled, they don't need to show up. Like, it's easy to understand.
Yep.
I was shocked by the confusion that the average adult person has when it comes to the online space. And when I say shocked, the shocking thing was for me was how many people assumed that they just keep all of the services. And I mean these applications, right? I'm working through an
Mm-hmm.
application for fitness. I'm working through an application for nutrition, and people really assumed that they would just get to keep it. And so I have access to this after I leave, and I'm like, have you ever had like a premium channel service like HBO, or
Yeah.
like, you don't cancel it and then watch it? That kind of
Yeah.
and that's and as ridiculous as it's felt to me, it's still unfairly assumptive on my part to think that someone else would think the same way that I
Mm-hmm.
think about it, in the absence of communicating a policy for it. Here's what
Yep.
happens after you decide to cancel our working relationship. you'll get this, and you'll get this, and you'll have access to this for 30 more days, and then you'll lose
Mm-hmm.
access. It helps tremendously
Yeah.
when people leave. And the other, just quick side note here, Amber,
Yeah. Go for it.
like I need you guys to stop having these emotional breakups with clientele, just generally
Mm-hmm.
speaking, right? I can't count on one hand how many clients have come back two, three, five, 10 times in my
Mm-hmm.
10 years being online just because of the fact that the relationship was dismissed amicably, right? And we see these questions in our groups all the time. And I'll get off this soapbox really quick, Amber, I promise. But
No,
we see
go
these
for it.
questions in our group. Well, what should I say to this? This lady said that she lost her leg and she can't continue. Like, what do you mean? What you say? Okay, I understand. I hope you feel better.
They shout, "Fire her as a client. She's
Yeah,
not
fight.
committed."
Get rid of her. I'd get her on the phone and tell her that she can do it one leg. Like, and I understand you're coaching humans through their own brick walls, right? A lot of people quit
Mm-hmm.
things for a lot of reasons that don't make sense, and they need a nudge and they need to understand you can keep going. But some of the things that you guys want to rebut, provide a rebuttal to, they aren't objections. They're truths of these people's lives. Like, oh, my client said that she lost her job and her husband lost her job and she won't be able to go in it. What should I say to her? Say, man, I'm so sympathetic to the fact that you lost your job. We'll
Mm-hmm.
extend for this amount of time, after which, but you're always welcome to come back. Like, stop ending
No.
these relationships in,
Yeah.
acrimoniously, like with all this emotion. Like, sometimes people just got to go. Let them go. You're great. You know more than most other online coaches do on the planet. Trust me, if you come through our systems, you're the top 1%. They're going to go
Yep.
out. They may go out and try to investigate, but most of what's out there is trash, and they'll be back. My clients come back all the time. Just
Mm-hmm.
that's off that soapbox, but I just wanted to mention that.
No, that's great. Oh, that's a great ad. Um, Another one to look at for situational policies, like injury policy. Like, what if they get hurt while doing something, right? Um, Something that you've suggested. How do you want to handle that? Especially because when it happens, we have that oh shit, I'm gonna fall apart because I feel terrible feeling. Right. So again, kind of knowing what you want to do ahead of time is helpful, and also how you're going to help them through it. Um, and then a
Try to hurt them.
non-compliance policy. So if they don't follow through on things, how do you want to handle that? So obviously there's a ton of coaching that needs to happen to figure out what's happening. But if it's just not being done and you've done your best coaching that you've ever done in your life and it's just not happening, then what? If they don't meet the deadline to turn something in, if they don't, submit nutrition information and that's part of how you help with stuff, what are you going to do? So having that set up ahead of time is helpful as well. Because that happens all the time. Everybody goes through phases where they're like, I just am not turning stuff in because I'm overwhelmed or whatever.
It's
And for some,
true.
it's kind of an acute issue. And then for others, it's a chronic issue. So for those chronic non-compliance people, how do you want to handle that?
Dr. Trey, the chronic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And there's a ton of other situations that will come up. And that's kind of the funny thing about some of these policies is you don't know that you need them until you've kind of ran into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so there'll be a lot of things that you'll start adding over time. So, a
Yes.
lot of this, you don't have to necessarily have it all in one go. Feel free to add as you run into situations.
Oh, and I like to speak to that too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't go, don't run into the same issue twice, right? Like, when it happens, deal with it as best you can. You didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
don't not fix it and then have it repeat, right? Like, when
Yeah.
you have these instances, jump on it, do what you can, and then most of my best policies and procedures in my business happen as a result of some error that I made, but I
Mm-hmm.
won't let it repeat. Like, fix it, install something that fixes it so you don't, because it's not a one-off. It's going to repeat if it's not
Yeah.
addressed. Get
Yeah.
get it out of there.
Yeah. Policies of by nature is because the shit happens all the time. Like
Right,
that's
right.
that's what they're there for.
Shit
because people
happened
are gonna
again.
people. I know.
They
I
are going to
know.
people.
Uh, yeah. Next bucket. So financial policies. So this is one where a lot of emotional stuff comes into play, especially when you're first starting your business. Like your emotions are very closely tied to your money.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're often living, paycheck to paycheck when you're first starting. It's inconsistent. You're stressed, and so anything that requires a money conversation is extra stressful. So lots of fun stuff here. So payment policy. What are your payment terms, timing, how much, how often? Are you
Mm-hmm.
automating? Are you sending invoices? So what's your payment policy as far as that's concerned? What happens if a payment is late? What's your late payment policy? Are there consequences? So some people charge interest. Now keep in mind that there are different local laws for stuff like that. So definitely check into that. Do you have a grace period? Do you keep charging, like Stripe, for example? We use Stripe. It keeps trying. It tries 5 times before it will quit trying. So those are things that are helpful for clients to know, especially if you're charging like their bank account directly and there's potentially
Mm-hmm.
overdraft fees.
Yes.
And
Been
if
there.
your system keeps trying, that might be a problem.
Oh yeah, I fucked that up before.
Yeah.
Know know all about that one too. I mean, it's just the
Oh,
minefields
yep.
of entrepreneurship, man. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it happened once. I instituted a policy,
That happened again.
and I gave a
Yep.
little live broadcast about that one to just let
Did
people
you?
know, hey, look, it's not me, but this is how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So don't
Yep.
overextend here, right? If
Yep.
there's a lot to that one. Um,
Yep.
but you're right. Most of the emotion is tied to the money situations.
Mm-hmm.
Once you overdraft a person like 3 times uh, in 1 month,
They ain't gonna be happy.
yeah, they don't come back. A spoiler alert, if
No,
you
they
in case you're wondering how that went for me. Yeah, I don't even know this person is still alive. I've been blocked on all social media across the board. Like it's
Uh,
not a
I think if they
great.
died, they probably would be haunting you if that was the case.
Probably so. Probably so. So they're alive. They're alive because they would definitely
Yeah.
be under my bed
Yeah.
every night. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, get that money stuff straight as quickly as you possibly can.
Yep.
And again, don't be timid about it though, right? Like just be direct. It's not that
Yes.
there's no wrong way to inform on your policy other than to not inform on the policy. That's the only wrong way. So don't be too timid about it. People are good with it.
Nope.
People do, and this is a problem that I had, Amber, as a self-identifying nice person. Like I felt like I was
Mm-hmm.
being too rigid. But
Yep.
I had a client tell me, "Look, honey, I got policies for my gas discount card. Like we deal with this everywhere. It's not like it's not like you're becoming Scrooge McDuck because you have policies around the money. Like people have this. Heck, Blockbuster used to charge us for VHS cassettes back in the '90s. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
unusual. So
Yep.
don't push your objection about it off on it. Don't project your fear about it onto a client because they're good with it. They just
Nope.
want to know what's what. Um, that's all I got to say.
Well, and again, this comes back to you, and you can turn them into a Scrooge McDuck, kind of situation if it's all centered on you.
Yes.
So getting into like refund policies, your guarantee, that sort of stuff, you
Hmm.
can definitely get very kind of Scrooge McDuck there if you're being only focused on protecting yourself.
Right.
But especially when it comes to financial policies, they are also meant to be protecting your clients, not just you.
One hundred
So,
percent.
refund policies, under what conditions are refunds offered, if any? Uh, Early termination policy, especially for those of us who offer like a minimum commitment period, like you have to commit for 3 months, 6 months,
Hmm.
whatever. What happens if they want to leave early? How does that work? My favorite, guarantees slash happiness clauses. They're similar, but not exactly the same. If you offer a guarantee of some sort. So a guarantee is going to be more like if this result does not happen, then either you usually get some either kind of a refund or partial refund or whatever.
Right.
But then there are happiness clauses, which are a little bit more subjective, where if a client is not happy with, the way that they feel like things are going, then you make an adjustment to how you work together, right? And so usually a happiness clause does not have like a financial a refund or partial refund or whatever. It's a change in how we approach our working relationship. So I often see, and I don't know if you've kind of had the same experience, most coaches I see, no refunds, no, like, no, no, no,
Right.
no, no to everything.
Right. They got thrift shop policies. All sales
Yeah.
final, no refunds,
If you
no
breathed on it,
no nothing,
yeah.
November. Anything with no is included in
Yeah.
this policy. That
Yeah,
and
exactly.
there's a psychological effect that has on a. First of all,
Mm,
it's not typically associated with premium offerings across the board of sales, marketing, business when you're so rigid in that way.
mm-hmm.
Second, um, second is probably closely tied to an undervalued offer. Like usually the people that you have to say things like that to are not they're not very well invested in the thing like that's something that you'd have for like a I don't know like a subscription from in my opinion. And again, nothing wrong with it as long
Yeah.
as it's communicated, but it's kind of
Yep,
harsh,
exactly.
guys.
Yep.
Just
Well, and they have to, one of the things in my own soapbox when it comes to like guarantees and stuff, right? Its purpose is to make it easier for a customer or a client to say yes,
right.
because they're getting ready to not just invest a lot of money with you,
Hmm.
but time, energy, and other resources.
Right.
And that's very scary. I would never
Yes.
personally, and this is just me, hire someone that had zero guarantee where
No
like,
refund.
right, where like if I don't get what I bought, right, I'm still screwed.
Right.
you know
Right.
um so,
Uh,
but keep in mind a guarantee or a happiness clause. Like if you're worried about the money part about it, that's where a happiness clause comes into play instead.
right.
So you can add some reassurance through that instead if the idea of refunding money is like totally tripping you out. There are other ways to do it. You can get creative in presenting a solution, but the whole point of a guarantee or a happiness clause is to make it easier for customers to say yes to trying to work
Mhm.
with you. But also like save money because eventually you're going to have to give a refund in some way, shape, or form.
It's
Like it's
gonna
just
happen.
going to happen, whether they dispute, especially with services and coaching services, disputes happen more frequently and are harder to fight. So save money and have that as a backup.
Please do.
So that way it doesn't ruin your
It's just so much
financial
easier.
situation if it does happen.
It's
Yeah.
so much easier, regardless of policy. You kind of really don't want to hem and haw with a client about their
Mm-hmm.
refund, and like it's just easier to say, I completely understand. I apologize that this wasn't what you thought it might be. I've already processed your refund. Like it's just sometimes the juice on those exchanges ain't worth the squeeze. And I've had that happen
Mm-hmm.
and had clients come back and say, in
Yeah.
the absence of the heated emotion, you know what? I was
Yep.
really angry back then, but also my dog had died and my father
Mm-hmm.
had come back into I was going through a lot. And once I separated from that rent, I see how professionally you handled it, because one of the greatest ways to get emotional capital from a client for your services is for something to go wrong and them have the experience of how well you handled it. Like that's a big
Yes.
boost usually to the client relationship. So yeah, say that's probably the greatest tip for me, Amber. That's come out of this
Mm-hmm.
podcast episode so far is just save a little money for returns and refunds, and then
Mm-hmm.
when reasonable, just say, I completely understand and give the refund. I've seen coaches be, for lack of a better term, blackballed on the internet because one person who had one bad
Mm-hmm.
experience just won't let it go. They just won't let it go.
Yep.
You'll make more money, but that reputation thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's off topic, but
And sometimes
I feel
it's not worth your time or energy to
it's just
fight it.
not.
If
It's
if
just
if you normally make $100 per hour and it takes you 3 hours to fight this person over it, you probably could have made a couple times that if you would have invested it
Right.
elsewhere,
Oh my
And I
gosh.
understand the principle of the matter sometimes.
We
100%.
get
I
it.
get that way too. I'm very justice. That's just not
Yes.
right. And I can't handle it. I get it. But that's why the
Same.
policy is here.
Right.
So to
Right.
save you from yourself occasionally.
That's exactly right. That's a good point.
um, so looking at another bucket, ethical policies.
Ooh.
And so this, yeah. So this is a big one. So some kind of ethical framework around your coaching services. So things like scope of practice, obviously, is a big one for us. What do you help with? What don't you help with?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you going to handle it if and when someone asks you to help with something that is outside of your scope? So
Yes.
thinking ahead to that. Oh,
The
sorry, my
discount
watch is
code
ringing
of
for
it
some
all.
reason.
Um, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Because we
been
want to
very
help.
clear over the years, yeah, about my relationship with products that I don't create. And all of my clients and pretty much people who even before they work with me, they're really familiar on the fact that I have and I'm not this is not I'm not saying it's bad for you to have this. Just for my purposes, my ethics run away from products, from supplements, from discount codes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Great way, affiliate marketing, great way to make money. More power to you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not something that I resonate with. But there's clarity in the communication between my clients because they'll ask me for supplement information typically because they know that my policy is I'll never be deriving income from any supplements that I talk to them about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm sorry, Amber, you were saying?
No, that's a great point because if you do offer some type of product or affiliate service, whatever, that's something that needs to be very clearly outlined in your whole setup. So if you do make money off of pitching products, Amazon links, whatever, that
Mm-hmm.
legally needs to be addressed, but also it should be very clear in your policies about under what circumstances you do kind of share that kind of stuff, if at all.
True.
Confidentiality and disclosure. Under what conditions are you sharing client information with who? So like if you're working with their doctor or if you do nutrition coaching but they're also working with a personal trainer and you're working together, or if there's an emergency that happens, under what circumstances are you sharing their private information, if at all? So
Mm-hmm.
if you do see room to where you are working with another professional, what are you sharing, how, that sort of thing.
It's a very
So
good
those
point.
are it's just not something we always think about ahead of time. So it's nice to have a little reminder. And then the last one, I think, then after this, we can probably close up because I know this is a ton of information. But a deviation for flexibility. Just because it's a policy doesn't mean that you can't have flexibility in it. There's always going to be a situation where you bend, just because the situation's called for. If you normally say, well, you can only pause for 2 weeks every quarter, but then, they found out that their adoption went through or something and they need more time off to
Right.
do that. I mean, you're going to say yes. I mean, come on.
Yes. Yes.
You could be correct in saying no, but you would be the asshole anyway for saying,
Yeah.
for sticking to it. Uh,
You don't need to be a stickler in that way.
No,
And
exactly. So understand when you are willing to bend, under what circumstances make sense to bend.
right. Because
And that's not one
ultimately,
that you would share with them. That's a personal policy.
right. Right. Exactly. Because ultimately, you're going to have pretty deep relationships with your clientele, or at least I believe that you should. I think that's normal because clients put us in that cosmetologist chair a lot, where they're telling you things and sharing details of
Mm-hmm.
their lives with you that they maybe some of the other closest people to them don't share because we we happen to be hand in hand with them through a lot of struggling moments, right? And then it just feels natural to confide in your coach. Um, so these guidelines and policies, they're the framework, but they're not the hard, perfect rule of never deviate, never coloring outside the lines. There are going to be situations where your guidelines will keep you out of trouble, and there are going to be situations where your guidelines prevent you from bearing your humanity, right? And as a good coach, you have to know which time which thing is happening. So sometimes you deviate, and sometimes the guidelines protect you both. But maintain a great relationship. The basis here is that things are communicated simply and understandably up front,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're never
Yep.
chasing the situation to the extent that you can prevent yourself from chasing it. You're always out. This is like the last episode that we did, Amber. You're kind of trying to stay in front of things is always going to benefit you as a business owner. And the more you find yourself reacting to things, probably the worse your life is as a coach,
Yep.
because then you're just a firefighter. You don't want to be a firefighter, man.
Yep.
It's exhausting. I've done that too.
Yep.
Exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we all have. And
Yeah.
especially for those of us that are kind of anxious by nature, like having these kind of things in place can really put that at ease. uh I know that like if someone reached out for a refund, like my initial instinct is like my heart like goes really fast, my
What did I
stomach
do?
drops, and then I'm also like a little pissed off, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a little bit of both. And so having things like this in place helps temper lizard brain a little bit, being upset about the situation, feeling, the ego thing that happens, like, how dare you?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um, and that's a natural reaction to have. There's
It
nothing wrong
is.
with it, but what behavior we have after is more important. So knowing that ahead of time, so you're not kind of winging it, makes your life a lot better. Creates a far better client experience, and just makes your life so much easier.
So much
So
easier. That was good shit. You did well for yourself today, Amber. I was hesitant initially
gracias.
when you pitched the idea. I was like, well, I don't have anything to say. I got my Twizzlers, but I think you've done well
Well,
for
you can
yourself.
see I'm anxious because
Yeah.
this is how my brain works. Okay, what could ever possibly go wrong? And
This
let me daydream about, because it's like when you think about like I'm laying in bed and like, okay, if someone were to break into my house right now, what would I do? I have a plan literally for all of those situations.
oh my gosh.
I shit you not.
Oh, the
I know that in my master bath, there's a closet. I could probably kick the drywall down and it goes right outside into like a little outdoor closet. Grab Nate and the dogs, and out we go. I have a plan for all of it.
I'm happy that you're prepared, because I know that you have your son there. I know that Nate's there, and I'm glad that he's in the protective custody of his mother. Uh, Also, I pity you that these thoughts run through your mind incessantly.
All the
Uh,
time.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm usually thinking about like cookies, or did Optimus Prime really have to die in the first Transformers cartoon?
Uh,
And was it really necessary for Rodimus Prime to take over? Because these are terrible Transformers. Like these are the thoughts that run
I
through
would.
my mind.
I wish
But
I had those. That would be
yeah,
far more fun.
but we love your tenacity for preparation, Amber. That's what made this a
There
great
you go.
episode. If it was me, it'd just been like an
There we
hour
go.
worth of jokes, mostly bad
Hey,
jokes.
but it's
Uh,
fun. But
yeah,
I like
well,
them.
well done. We're
There
good
we
peanut
go.
butter and jelly, Amber, or
Yes,
ham and cheese,
indeed.
whatever.
So I as long as it's not ham and sugar. That
Okay, no,
was
not the ham and
that
cheese.
was
That was a
terrible.
faux pas. That was an error.
Yeah.
I was thinking faster than
And
my
it's
mouth
like, all
could
right,
articulate, and
North Carolina, we're not
yeah,
we're not
ham,
cousins
ham
anymore.
and sugar, ham and cheese, y'all. Um,
There you go.
is it
So
time
we'll
for
go ahead and
another?
recommend.
Yeah, time for your
We'll recommend an
recommendation.
episode.
All
Yeah,
right.
and I did better. I did prepare this time. So,
Oh, okay.
um, so let's get
We'll
into
be the judge of that,
recommending
Amber.
episode one. I know. Episode 133, Beware of Reckless Ambition.
Oh, I like
And I
that one.
love this. Yeah, so this one's one of my favorites for sure. because we're, so into hustle culture, go, go, go. And I can do this and I can do that. And we're very reactionary.
Yes.
And that it creates that reckless ambition, versus kind of this methodical, thought out
Mm-hmm.
ambition, which is way more effective. So in this episode, going over the concept of true ambition versus chaotic ambition, and how to tell the difference of which zone you're kind of in. Um, so I think this is a really great episode that ties into here fairly
Feels
nicely.
appropriate.
So that's it.
All right.
Well
The
done.
South has risen again. Um, Thank you
Indeed.
for your time, Amber, and the great podcast. You're awesome. And I'm going to go
So
now.
are you.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Enjoy your Twizzlers.